Okay, so this is something that I wanted to almost avoid for so long because most of the time when I talk now, it's more about this new life that I have and this transformation that I've gone through. But I don't really talk much about what my life was in the past. And for many years, maybe 10 years, it was always tennis. Like I was doing it almost every day for 10 years. And when you do something every day for almost 10 years, it ends up being such a big part of your life. And I think because I wanted to come away, because I'd done it for so long and I wanted to come away from it so badly and do something else, and that ended up being writing and this more artistic life, that I didn't really want to talk about it much. But I realized it just in the last like year or two that how much tennis taught me. And often it's not until you reflect on something that you've done for so long that what that thing has helped you become and what you've learned from that thing, the principles that you've learned. So I wanted to share those principles with you today. In fact, I'm going to share 12 principles that I learned from tennis that may help you in your life right now. And the first principle is preparation. Preparation meant and means still to this day to me that 90% of the work is done before you begin. So we would always train for 25 plus hours a week, and we would most of the time do the best in the local tournaments, the state competitions and things. And this is only because going into the competition, most people would have been playing a few days before, or training for a few weeks, some hours here and there. But we'd been preparing for months and had already put in the hard work before the matches we played. So I realized that the goal of training was to make it harder than it is in the match, so that when it came to the match, it seemed easier and we were ready for longer and more physical matches than the people that we were playing against. So this meant that if the achievement was winning a tournament, so whatever the goal is for you in your life, that 90% of winning the tournament or getting to achieving the goal is everything you do leading up to achieving the goal. So 90% of winning the tournament was everything we did before the tournament began. And that was a massive lesson that I take every single day in my life. Number 2, the greatest things that you will ever do, nobody will ever see, but they will sure feel it. So our coach would tell us stories about people who would finish training and then they'd go and train by themselves, like hitting on the wall or something. And these people that were always like going from training and then doing more training. That was what the stories were about. And it's kind of reinforcing that the training never stops. Another story was most of the time I would go home at the time and I would just game or I would watch YouTube. But the players that actually like made it would go home and take care of their bodies, for example. So they saw tennis as their life, whereas I saw tennis as the time I was either working out or playing tennis. So what separated the good players from the great players was spending time on the little things that nobody wanted to do. And that ended up making the biggest difference. Number 3, practice, practice, and keep practicing. It's all practice until it comes naturally. So often later when I became a tennis coach, I'd be hitting with people and they'd say the common thing of, how did you get so good? And I would always say, just practice. But I never really thought about it deeper than that. And because it wasn't just practice, it was a lot of practice. So most of the people who play sport, or at least play tennis, not at a competitive level, they struggle to comprehend how someone can be so good at the sport. But I realized that they couldn't comprehend it because they were only training like 3 to 4 hours a week, while we were doing over 25 hours per week, every week for many years, in my case 10 years. So it made me realize that just by doing the thing more than whoever you're competing with can be one of the greatest advantages that you have. And it taught me the principle, which is quantity becomes quality. And it's like that story, I think I heard this from Alex Hormozi, that he said there are two classes in school. One class, and they're creating clay pots, I think. And one class is, their objective is to make as many clay pots in the term as possible. The other class have the objective to make one clay pot per student and make it as good as possible. But the interesting thing is, the class that focused on quality, they ended up making not as good quality as the kids who did the quantity, the more clay pots. So the moral of the story is quantity becomes quality. The more you do something, the better you get at it. Whereas if you only do it once and you try to make it perfect, then you can't compare it to anything else. The principle number 4, when you try something new, the mind loves to grab hold of anything it can to bring you down. I see it all the time in people that I coach. They try a new technique or a new way of doing a skill. And one of the first things they say is, "Oh, I can't," especially the kids, "I can't do this. I can't. It's too hard." But you know how many times that they've tried? 1, 2, maybe 3 times. 1, 2, or 3 times. And they are already telling themselves that they can't. And you might laugh at the kids doing this, but this is the attitude that we take through life. And that's why we don't do anything new and why our lives don't change much. Because since we were a kid, we had this belief of, if you can't do something within the first few times, if you're not good at it, then just don't do it. And so many times I've battled with this for so long. My heart wasn't in tennis anymore or tennis coaching, and I wanted to go and write, but every time I thought of doing something new, I would always take a step toward it and then take 2 steps back. But as it says in my book, Lost in the Right Direction, right here, oh, what great product placement. What holds you back also holds the key to you going forward. And it taught me that the positive changes that you make create this momentum of belief that you can do something new. That just because you have been doing something doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. Okay, number 5. So if you learn something new and the change happens almost immediately, if you go into something new and the transition, this change happens almost immediately, then this change, this transition has been waiting for you for a very long time. So when I'm coaching people both for tennis and in their personal lives, oftentimes a little change that they could make in their life gets mentioned and it just clicks straight away. And suddenly they know what they need to do and how to do it. Like the other day, I was talking with a friend and we were talking about his relationship, and he said, "My mind is too cloudy. I will make the decision when my mind becomes clearer." And then I replied to him, "When you make the decision, your mind will get clearer." And he just looked at me, and we both knew that's what he needed to do. So sometimes it takes, and this is how I write and this is how I coach people, sometimes it takes just a few right words and your life can completely change direction. Okay, number 6. Timing is everything, but even timing takes time. So this is always something that interests and fascinates me. It's that how you get power in tennis is timing, and how you get control in tennis is timing. How you anticipate in tennis is timing. But if timing was so easy, everyone would be good at tennis. So timing, like anything in life, takes time. And one of my favorite quotes is, "Your timing when you want things to happen is different from the world's timing for you." So when you want something to happen and you want it like now or tomorrow, the world has a different time for you to get that thing. If you watch I think it was my first YouTube video, there are 2 types of people. There are people who think everything comes at the wrong time, they're in the wrong place, wrong time, all the time. And then there are those few who believe that everything happens at the right time, they're in the right place at the right time to learn the lessons that they need for what's to come. Okay, number 7, those who listen get better fast. but those who listen and put it into action get better the fastest. So always the kids who would listen would improve at a rate greater than those who wouldn't listen, right? But one thing I always noticed was, again, whether it was tennis or personal life, even when people would listen, they would come back the next day and they didn't implement the change. And that was the big difference. The ones who would listen and then put it into action sooner rather than later got better sooner rather than later. And it's funny that some people ask me, how have you written 3 books? Like, how is that possible? And you're a dad, you're doing some tennis coaching, you're doing some personal coaching, you're starting your own business, you created community. How do you write 3 books? How do you have time to write? And I say, you don't understand. Like, after we finish talking, after I finish doing this YouTube video, I go into my room and I write. When I finish work, I write. When I go to the toilet, I write. It's almost more difficult to not write a book than to write one if you have that attitude. That was the amusing thing that I found in life, was that often you know what you need to do in your life, but as the book says, it's just a matter of doing it. Okay, number 8. I'm doing my numbers funny with my hands, but when you are enjoying it, oh, this is such a good one. When you are enjoying it, you get a little better at it. So there's this story about, I was coaching a beginner's class for tennis, and this guy, he was the worst guy in the class, like by far, his man. And he's not improving much. He can literally barely hit the ball. Like 4-year-olds can drop the ball and hit the ball, but he could barely drop it to himself and hit it. Like he would air swing when he was dropping it to himself, let alone if someone hit it to him. And one day I just noticed, like probably after 8 weeks or something, and he finally started to connect with the ball. But in the beginning, he was getting really frustrated, and he was like, I can't hit the ball. I'm not as good as everyone else, whatever. But one day he starts actually connecting with the ball. And then he starts like laughing. And then he would miss the ball again like he used to, but then he would laugh about it. And then he was like, he turned to me and he said something that stuck with me and that I took for the rest of my life. And he said, you know what, Jack? When you enjoy it, you get a little better at it. And I was like, oh my God. Like that principle. And I took that principle with me for the rest of my life. And for example, like now when I go and take out the bins, I used to like get to the end of the day and I used to be like, oh man, I just want to lay down and just like chill for a little bit. But now like, but I'd have to take the bins out and I'm like, oh man, I have to take the bins out. But now when I take the bins out, I make it like, what if I can just enjoy taking the bins out? What if I can enjoy washing the dishes? Like, what if I can enjoy everything that I'm doing in my life? Because when you can enjoy it, you get a little better at it. And that's not to say I'm going to be a professional person that puts out the bins, but it means if that's a part of my life right now, why wouldn't I enjoy it? Okay, number 9. In the beginning, I don't know why I'm doing hands, by the way, you know how to count. Number 9, in the beginning, people think to take control of your life, you have to work harder and harder and harder. But in fact, what tennis taught me was being relaxed gives you more power. And if you think about it, if your very life depends upon your interaction with the people that you have, then just think, who do you want to be around? Do you want to be around someone or be someone who is working hard all the time, who is hard on the inside, hard on themselves, and tough on everyone? He or she comes across or is trying to force their way through life, because those who force their way through life end up sharing their winnings with no one, sharing their achievements with no one. So, but when you're relaxed, you get to enjoy it more, and you get to enjoy those interactions. You get to enjoy the relationship with yourself and growing more. You get to enjoy the process more. But what I discovered, especially when I started writing, was because writing is a creative process, right? But it was when I was relaxed, when I was enjoying it, that's when my creative power, and that's where the soul comes from, is just when you're relaxed. Okay, number 10, positive self-talk. It gets you to your potential quicker. Very important one, your internal dialogue. I coach this kid at the moment, and he struggles mentally, right? And that's the biggest part of tennis. Is like Novak Djokovic, I think, says 90% of tennis is mental. And it's kind of like anything you do in life. 90% of it is mental. And every time he misses a shot, he gets really down on himself. But the interesting thing is that when he gets really down on himself and he plays the next point in tennis, it trickles into that next point. So because he gets down on himself, the next point he doesn't play so well and he misses again. And then he gets more down on himself. And then he gets more down on himself. And he keeps missing because he's in this downward spiral of negative internal dialogue. But what separates, and I actually think I heard, no, it was Federer, I think, in his new documentary. I haven't seen it, but like, this is what he spoke about. He said, what separates the top few players from the rest is when you finish a point, it's that first 15 seconds as soon as the point ends that separates the top few players from the rest in the world. And I was like, wow. If Federer is saying something like that, then it's probably worth paying attention to. And so he's saying that if you win, have positive self-talk. If you do something good, have positive self-talk. But if you miss, if you make a mistake in your life, have positive self-talk. Talk about like what you can do better to improve that. Not, oh, I did this, I suck. And that's where it ends up. I suck. And then you go into that spiral. But if you keep the positive self-talk, it's like that constant growth. And again, if Federer is saying it, if I'm saying it, no, if Federer is saying it, then it is worth paying attention to. Okay, number 11. The serve. This is a very interesting one. The serve is the only shot that you can control. And it is the shot that everyone has the most trouble with. So everyone is best at forehands or backhands or volleys, and those are the shots that they're reacting to, like they're coming from another person. But as soon as they have to be in control, it's more difficult for most people. And this is like your life, people's lives. In a working context, most people are working for other people. They're hitting lots of forehands, lots of backhands, like working for the other person because they always have to be reactive. And they're in their comfort zone. And and they stay in that comfort zone because they wouldn't know what to do with all the power and control if they actually had power and control in their life. So why a lot of people back away from having this, like leading their own life, is because they just don't know what to do if they had the opportunity to. And so it made me realize that if I can get control over the things that I had full control over, I would be a much more powerful individual. Okay, number 12, and this is where it gets a little bit more in the heart. And I wasn't going to put this in, but I was like, you know what, if I'm afraid of talking about love, then what am I doing? So number 12 is that you can meet people you love and friends you'd only hope for through sport. So I don't play much tennis anymore, and I don't think much about the actual sport, but I do think about the people quite regularly. So it's crazy to think that even in one of the most competitive sports, it still comes back to community and connection. And that's what it's all about. And I want to finish this video that in saying that, coming soon, I'm starting a community for people who have been living a stagnant life, who are lost and who feel trapped in their own life. Like I was with tennis 5 years ago, living for someone who I just wasn't anymore. And this community is about starting to look for something deeper in your life, something more meaningful, a greater purpose, because I believe that everyone has their own unique purpose in the world. And if you're not living in this purpose, then you're missing out on what your life could be. And because that thought alone scared me so much, I wanted to create this community to bring people away from this broken, stagnant, purposeless life toward a life of depth, of substance, of meaning and purpose. And so if that resonates with you, then send me a message, because I'll be here. I would love to connect with you and hear from you. That's the video. So thank you so much. I'm really enjoying these YouTube videos at the moment. I'm like starting to get more of the art of it and feel more comfortable in front of the camera, because I am a lot better when I'm just talking like with a person. As we said before in the video, that timing takes time. So I'm getting used to speaking in front of the camera. I feel like I'm getting more comfortable with it. I hope that you're enjoying them, that you're getting something out of them. Even if it's just one thing, like usually when I watch a YouTube video, if I can get one thing out of it, I feel like the YouTube video did its job. So hopefully you got something out of this. By the way, if you're wondering like, wow, he's always in like a different room. It's because we just have this mansion house. No. It's because at the moment, well, we have a 2-year-old daughter, which is the main thing. So we can't really video record in our own house. So because she's just running all over the place, or else you'd just have her jumping on me and stuff, which would be fun too, but you probably wouldn't get as much out of it. But yeah, we're just in my parents' house at the moment. You know, we got to do what you got to do. So yeah, as usual, as always, be kind, be caring, be courageous. I'll see you on the next video. Lots of love. Oh, by the way, the next video is going to be a pretty cool one. I've been kind of scared of just like this one, doing this one. It's about psychedelics. So I hope this video did wonders for your world, and I'll see you on the next video. Lots of love.